Sometimes, out of the blue, research leads to a discovery that comes as a complete surprise, a wonderful surprise. While working on a University of Houston project to integrate art and history, I considered the bronze U of H Cougars, the Chicago Picasso that was booed when it was unveiled in the 1950s, but nothing was right. I wanted something different. And then one weekend, as I was driving near my mother's home in Galveston, I noticed the historic cemetery on Broadway Avenue. A marble statue of an angel attracted my attention, and I pulled over. As I walked through the cemetery filled with carved monuments and statues, I realized that this was art. It was three-dimensional art that students could touch, and it had a story. It was the perfect integration of art and history. As I took photos for my project, I noticed one small marble grave carved with old-fashioned roses. On the base were the words, "Our darlings, children of Charles and Anna Vidor." The name Vidor, also pronounced Vidor, was familiar, and when I returned home, I pulled out my computer to begin my research. The Vidor family came to Galveston from Hungary in the mid-1800s. By the turn of the century, Charles Vidor had built a successful lumber business. Sadly, Charles and his wife Anna had lost 3 children, and the tiny monument I discovered marked their graves. At the turn of the 20th century, the Vidor family lived through what still remains as the worst natural disaster in the history of our country, the Galveston Hurricane of 1900. No one knows exactly how many people died in that storm, but estimates range between 6,000 and 12,000. The Vidor family barely survived by sheltering in the second story of their home while the flood waters filled the first story. Their grandson, King Wallace Vidor, was only 6 years old at the time of the storm. As an adult, in an article he wrote for the 1935 Esquire magazine, he described the fear he experienced.
It was just about pitch dark, and the wind was screaming and hissing like the very devil. In the yard, the trees beat furiously in the wind. Later that night, the roots of one of the trees let go, and the tree came flying through the air like a boy's kite. It crashed against the side of the house, and a leafless branch reached in through the broken window like the wet arm of some black monster reaching in to grab us all and pull us outside. I was beginning to feel sleepy, so I closed my eyes and went to sleep. Before long, I heard singing and wondered if I was asleep or awake. But I could hear the wind screaming at the house, so I knew I must be awake. Then I realized that our 2 mothers were praying. They were asking God to have mercy on their souls.
The family survived the storm, but it left its mark on King Vidor, and he never forgot the terrible experience. As a teenager, Vidor became interested in moving pictures while working in the first movie theater in Galveston. He later moved to Hollywood to direct movies in the 1920s. His very first movie, The Great Storm, told the story of the 1900 Galveston Hurricane, but no copies of the movie have survived. As I continued my research, I discovered what Vidor's early experiences had prepared him for. In 1930, as movie producers were about to begin filming the movie Gone with the Wind, they needed a good director, and they stole the director from the set of another movie being filmed about a popular children's book. Most of that movie was finished, except for 2 short black and white segments, one at the beginning and one at the end of the movie. King Vidor was hired to direct these 2 scenes, but he was not acknowledged in the credits, and it wasn't until the original director died years later that Vidor ever spoke about it. The movie, MGM's The Wizard of Oz. It made perfect sense. Who would be better to direct a young, frightened Dorothy as a devastating tornado approached her Kansas home than someone who had lived through the most deadly storm in our country's history when he was a child? This brought everything together: the cemetery, the art, the history of the Galveston storm, and one of the most beloved films of all time. I didn't think it could get any better, but I was wrong. I wanted to see if the family home was still standing, and I searched the name Vidor. I was thrilled to find an old photo of the home on Winnie Street. However, because of a recent hurricane, I wasn't sure of the current state of the house that had been built in 1899. Just 4 years earlier, Hurricane Ike, the worst storm to hit the Texas coast since the storm of 1900, had devastated Galveston. The hurricane killed hundreds of people, including 37 in Galveston. The wind, storm surge, and flooding caused $50 billion worth of damage. Thousands of homes were demolished, and 80% of the homes, businesses, and buildings in Galveston were damaged by the storm that left water standing for days. Another great loss from Hurricane Ike was that of the ancient oak trees that lined Broadway Avenue and shaded the turn-of-the-century homes. Days of soaking in salt water left by the storm surge had slowly killed thousands of the once magnificent trees. To preserve the ancient wood, artists came to Galveston and carved the oak trunks into pirates, dolphins, birds, and other symbols of the city's past and present, creating beauty out of destruction, something the city desperately needed. As I parked my car and approached the Vidor house, I was happy to see the Victorian home had been preserved, but there was something else. The huge oaks I had noticed in the photo, shading the house, were gone. And in their place, someone who wanted a heart and a beloved companion. It was the perfect integration of art and history. Sometimes out of the blue, research leads to a discovery that comes as a complete surprise. A wonderful surprise.